OpenTTD and Transport Fever 2, both transport simulation games and at their core, very similar, but not entirely, so let's take a look at the key differences and see if Transport Fever can be a sort of spiritual successor to OpenTTD. There are plenty of non-gameplay differences between these two games, however, today I am focusing on how these games play and feel, so let's dive in. First up, it's the graphics. OpenTTD has 2D pixel art style graphics based on a game that's over 30 years old. It has an isometric perspective and maintains a very retro feel. You can also customise the graphics. There's a few different graphics packs available you can download in the in-game content. This is in stark contrast to Transport Fever 2, which has a full 3D world, one in which you can zoom in and out of smoothly, right down to the smallest details. The vehicles are fully 3D modelled and look fantastic. Not just the vehicles though, the cities and landscape look great too. For me, this is probably one of the biggest differences between the two games, and that's why I started with it first. But the two things appeal to me both in different ways. I love the retro and iconic feel of OpenTTD's graphics, but also it's really nice to have more detailed models and more control over the game like you do in Transport Fever. I like them both. I really have to sit on the fence on this one. I think it's a matter of personal preference. Some people will want to see more modern, some people will want to see more retro. The building systems. For OpenTTD, the world is divided up into those isometric squares, and you can build your roads and track along them. You need to use the various different tools and tile pieces to go along the squares, or sometimes cut diagonally through in the case of track. You can place stations and depots down, and it all fixes to this grid system. In Transport Fever, there is no grid. You place your track and roads however you like. They can be long and straight, bendy and curvy, have junctions and intersections that just seem to work and snap in. Sometimes it can be a bit fiddly, but the result is absolutely fantastic. Now when it comes to construction, I must say I do prefer Transport Fever 2, only really because I like the big sweeping curves and be able to have them meander through the hillsides however I like, in addition to the complex junctions. Now you can have complex junctions in OpenTTD too, but they are always with tight corners and right angles and all this sort of stuff. The train looks like it should really come flying off the tracks. Town growth. The default town growing algorithm in OpenTTD is quite simple. You just need to have up to 5 stations being serviced with things being dropped off or picked up on a regular basis, and the town will grow. You can do things like adding extra roads to the town to help it grow quicker, but that's pretty much it. It's also worth noting that you can download scripts that will change it, and you can have more complex growth algorithms that includes delivering different sorts of cargo at different rates and so forth, but in the base game it's very straightforward. Transport Fever actually has a relatively complex town growth algorithm. It depends on a number of different things. It depends on things like the amount of public transport, private transport, and the supply of various different items from around the game that you can acquire from industries. Also things like the quality of the stations, the amount of traffic, and the emissions affect how much the town will grow, giving it percentages and calculations and a target population for it to grow to. Now if we were talking about the base game, then Transport Fever would have this. However, you can get lots of different scripts in OpenTTD, and this adds variety to the different town growth algorithms that you can have, making the game more replayable. So OpenTTD has a fantastic option there if the vanilla one is just not enough for you. Vehicle routing. In OpenTTD you purchase vehicles and then you give that vehicle a set of orders. Those orders tell it to go from one place to another, and the vehicle will do that following the different tracks and roads that it finds along its path. It will dynamically work its way around the network and landscape to get to where it needs to go. In Transport Fever 2, we have something called lines. You set up your lines by adding particular destinations to them, and then a path is calculated and worked out that a vehicle will take along that line. It is a set route, a predefined path. That line is a way through your network, and the vehicles added to that line will only go that way along that line. There is no deviations, no working out, the vehicles just follow that route. For me, I prefer the way that OpenTTD does it. I like my vehicles to be able to find a route, go down a path, and get there different ways. This can be very useful if you've got parts of your network that might get busy, junctions that are getting crowded, and having alternate routes and paths is a nice way for the vehicles to flow around your network. However, this is less like real life, and if you want your vehicles to be a little bit more true to reality, then Transport Fever is actually the better way of doing it. Multiplayer. This one's going to be an easy one. Transport Fever 2 just doesn't have it. There's no opponents, both AI or human. It's just you in a scenario playing the game. Whereas in OpenTTD, you can play against AIs, although personally I find them a bit rubbish, but you can also play against other people and have fantastic games with loads and loads of people all playing at once. Maintenance. Both games have maintenance in some sort of way. In OpenTTD, the maximum reliability of your vehicles changes over time, and this affects how much they break down and therefore potentially clog up your network or make you less money. In Transport Fever, it's more of that the vehicle gets old, the emissions get poor, and this can affect the town growth and the happiness of your populations. Now, while this is not a big aspect of the gameplay, it is something worth mentioning because it works differently in both of the games. Traffic simulation. This is another quick one, but also an interesting one. In OpenTTD, we don't have traffic unless you count your own things on your own network, or competitors if you're sharing roads. In Transport Fever, in the towns and cities and in the country roads, there are other vehicles driving around on the world, and they can slow your trucks down and your buses down and your trams as well. Environmental. In OpenTTD, there is no real environmental impact to running your vehicles around the towns. However, if you modify hillsides or blow up trees, the local authority won't like you, and they may even stop you building new stations. This is different in Transport Fever. In fact, it's almost the polar opposite. You can always build new stations and infrastructure, the town just doesn't really care about that. But the pollution from your vehicles does have an effect on the city's growth and the happiness of the people in your towns. This is one of those things where I wish both games did both things. I would like it if Transport Fever was fussy about stations if you annoyed the local authority, and I'd like it in OpenTTD if the local authority had something to say about the amount of emissions around a town. The end game. Transport Fever 2 doesn't really have a proper endgame. It's all about just surviving and building and not failing, getting as much money as you can to build even more things so that you can make even more money. In OpenTTD, there is actually a leaderboard system, and you have to make it to a certain date where you get assigned a certain score. Those scores are made up of a number of different values, and you can try and attain these as you're building your transport empire. Other missing features. There are a few features that each game just doesn't have compared to each other. In OpenTTD, you can't put signals on tunnels or bridges. This is quite difficult for throughput reasons, but you can do that in Transport Fever. And in OpenTTD, you can't build your bridges over stations. Again, something you can do in Transport Fever, but is just not possible in OpenTTD. In Transport Fever 2, you are unable to fund your own industries or towns. As long as you have these turned on in OpenTTD, you're able to expand and grow your map by adding your own towns and industries. And there is limited waterway and canal systems in Transport Fever 2. Yes, you can alter the terrain and the water will flow into it, but you just can't build locks and canals like you can in OpenTTD. So, which is best? Well, that depends on one thing, and that thing is you. You, the viewer of this video. Do you like more retro games? Do you enjoy the isometric graphics style of games? Are you willing to overlook quirkiness within the game? Or do you like more modern 3D graphics and like quality of life features in your game that we've come to expect with more modern games? Well, there's actually another opinion, and that is, well, the same as mine, and that is both. I like both. Yes, they're very similar in many ways, but there's also some differences, and it's those differences I can enjoy. I love the nostalgia of OpenTTD, and I love the modern features of Transport Fever. I like playing both games, and I'll play both games for different reasons. So, if I was to choose one, it'd be extremely difficult because I genuinely enjoy both. So, I think it's down to you. Let me know in the comments, not only if you think I missed any differences, but what do you think? Does one win for you? Which one is best? Let me know down in the comments. Of course, put all your other thoughts, ideas and questions down there, and if you want to see either of these games being played, there's plenty of Let's Plays of both of them on my channel. I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, take care, and for now, goodbye.